My name's Sean Kingsley. I'm in my happy place here, up in my pottery that's at the end of my garden. I do a bit of gardening as well. And I make traditional earthenware pots, domestic ware and plant pots using local clay. And I've been long interested in using local materials as much as possible to find out what is possible, figure out if it's a product that people can use and that find acceptable, and to explore the way old potters, country potters used to work, and to see how that can be applied in the modern day. And in doing that, I've reduced the number of materials that I use, and the air miles that I use, because I'm not having to import clay from Stoke. I try and fire my kiln using solar panels, although of course that doesn't work. Although on balance I do actually manage to save up enough electricity in a sense to fire my kilns. I also work at the Duncan of Jordanstone College of Art and Design, which is quite a mouthful, DJCAD, and I run the ceramics facility there and help students to make anything that they want to make in clay. Well, I've got a little drawing here, so well, as metaphor artifacts and actual working IoT artifacts. So we can, that's a spectrum, isn't it? This is what you're describing. You know, I try and carefully listen to what you guys are saying. And so we could go on and on with metaphors, but actually nailing something down physically, actually you just have to focus down on it. And the puzzle jug thing sort of resonated a little bit, but at the same time I had other things going in case this didn't work out. And then as it developed, there's a comment Phil made about these things working independently. It's not IoT, so I thought, right, so we need two puzzle jugs. It needs to be a game and they need to connect with each other. So part of through the starting to make it and resolve things, the, I guess, design process evolves and you start to understand the object that you're making a little bit more. And then for a while I've had this idea of, well, one of the difficulties of putting any IoT in, it seems a bit incongruous to put IoT in ceramics, you know, actually to get things there. We're not seeing a lot of that type of thing going on, especially when you're getting wires and all that sort of stuff. So I thought, well, we've had this notion of using gold lustre for a few years now as a circuit, part of a circuit. So getting these two things to play with each other using gold lustre as circuit, and initially thinking of LEDs as a signifier for spouts to use, but recognising that you could use other sort of mechanisms like a voice mechanism, maybe saying choose funnel 3, or funnel 3 now works, or something like that. But that, of course, getting into the IoT stuff, you realise that becomes quite complicated just by speaking to somebody that knows. You need specific types of boards and chips and things like that. So it becomes a battle then of a physical thing, getting the objects itself made, making it a bit playful in terms of the electronic symbols on it instead of just the cut out mazes that the old puzzle jugs had. Changing the taunt so that it sort of related to the game itself with this new electronics, and making the taunt in Scots make it very local, but the taunt becomes a bit of a code in itself, so if you're not from this area you're maybe going to struggle to understand what it is a little bit. So this idea of a double puzzle jug starts to emerge. You've got the puzzle of the taunt, what is it that you do, and then eventually working out what to do, so that when the two circuits are complete, these two speak to each other via Wi-Fi, and one of the lights will come on and that will indicate which spout you can drink from.
So dinna end yourself on and dither. Both finish the circuit with your fingers, and there you'll mak the finest o' drinkers.
Right, I think I know. I understand that.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
You decoded it. So that's your first bit of the code,
So
isn't it?
fingers and also
What are the
together.
fingers?
Well, we got to put it together.
Yeah.
There's two jugs. So I'm thinking we have to hold hands to touch this, just for the film.
I love that.
Right.
Right, here we go. And it worked perfectly, you see. Ta-da! I've always wanted to hold Jess's hand. No, it's just an excuse to hold your hand. So,
Right.
we're trying to cover this over, put our fingers in it. Or is this like Peter Duncan? My hands aren't, there's a big spider in there.
Well, it is together, so we got to do them in sequence. Do we do 1, 2, 3, and then do a? So 1, 2, 3, make the connection.
That worked.
So, oh, one's getting close, but no.
Have I got to touch these?
So what do you think?
Well, we've clearly got the...
You got a flash.
Right.
Did you?
Yeah.
What did you touch, John?
I don't know. Where did my flash come?
It came under there.
Was-
And that's the LED. It's not a contact. It's an
That's
LED.
right, that's an LED.
Yeah. So was I doing anything when that happened? I don't think I was.
There you go, that's what you mentioned Google.
They're listening.
Yeah, they're listening. They're listening, drugs.
Right.
Right.
It's so tempting to show you how to do
It's
it.
not gonna. None of it will hurt, right? Have you told
Oh
us?
God.
There's one back here.
Ah.
Ah.
Oh, you'd hold your hand. You'd have it like this anyway.
You have it like that, with your hand down there.
Oh, I got a flash.
Oh.
Hey!
There, you both
But
got it. So this,
I was expecting that one to light up, but that one did. And
so
it's
at
not
this
good.
point,
Oh, now we've got to get the others to light up.
at this, oh, it's off
Oh,
again,
it's
John.
gone.
At this point,
Is it so bad?
ideally they would talk to each other
Yeah.
when you both completed the circuit, and then the LED would come on, or
Yeah.
would have somebody saying, "Take a drink." And then the notion that, in fact, that doesn't actually work.
So, there's a sort of trick in there, as
There's
well
a-
as a puzzle. There's a trick.
There's a
There's
trick,
sort of-
yeah.
yeah.
And I think that the challenge as well that you set was that you didn't want a resolved object in a sense.
Yeah.
It's a discursive object that you wanted.
Yeah.
So it can be interpreted in lots of ways. So in some respects that freed me up not to actually resolve that properly.
Yeah.
Make it just quite playful, and hopefully other users will find it. There's enough there to talk about.
I think our original discussion, which we probably had, maybe part of that discussion was with the group of commissioned craftspeople. Some of them was just with maybe with me and John and Jane. Was that idea of the idea of a trick in IoT of kind of the expectation that something was there to do one job, but in fact was doing something else, and there's definitely that kind of playfulness embedded in that, in terms of like, okay, you think you're drinking from there, but nothing happens, but you're drinking, actually you've got that. So there's that element. I think that definitely kind of, for us, was a kind of really pleasing. Yes, it was a metaphor, but now you've made it. You've made it
a physical.
You've made it. Yeah, you've made it manifest and made it do something so people can interact.
But I also think it speaks to quite deeply these objects aren't what we think they are, and I don't think actually the form you've taken as a jug isn't that really that different. If I squint my eyes and do this, that actually it could easily be a speaker shape, and this thing that this smart speaker is actually a smart microphone and not really the smartness of the speaker. It's a puzzle. It's a trick, and then also the content being elsewhere, and the people think it's listening only when they say the wait word like "Hey Alexa" or "Okay Google," and that's a trick and a puzzle. And it takes people, and maybe they never work this out. So you asked us to explicitly solve the puzzle, and there's something actually quite. It's both a trick, but it's an honest trick because it's the form and everything. And you told us these are puzzle jugs, whereas actually that conversation is not happening in the IoT.
Yeah. Although, in a sense, I was hoping that it was promising one thing but delivering, but failing, and
We never did get any whiskey.
No, exactly.
And that's a local. But the fact you chose the localness of whiskey as well. You didn't say vodka or gin or schnapps or something.
Right, I guess something this size, it might be beer rather than. Nice. And then something looks the same.
That's all.
That paid the potter.
Yeah, it's horrible.
Yeah.
But
So it's not the appearance, it's the resonance, and I suppose that's the thing. You're going back to your this is just a visual metaphor, but I think it's a really quite. Well, it's not visual actually; it's an audible metaphor. Sorry.
And tactile.
And
as well.
it's like, how do we test integrity?
Well, I wish you could, with objects that connect to the internet, if you could give it a tap and the sound of it just told you how many different cloud services it was connecting to. So if it was one, it'd be a single tone. Because most people would expect if they bought an Amazon Alexa, it was just connecting to Amazon's Alexa service. But of course it's not. There's many other data services and hidden services and data brokers, and the brokers are selling the data from the brokers to others. And I wonder whether there was just something really simple that was built into everything, which is like just a simple check of how many people are listening to this conversation or extracting this data. How many ways is this going? It's not this single line to the cloud. It's these really complex things, and it's like you might think of this as one material, but actually clay isn't a single material, is it? As we found when we were digging for it.
That's right.
And there's no one clay. There's many clays, and yet there are tests you can do. But did you put deliberately? Did you have to put? How did you make the crack? Well, that sounds really silly. Is it quite hard to make a single? Oh, it did, yeah. So you didn't design in the crack?
No. It's very difficult to do that.
I was going to say, is that impossible?
Yeah. It just so happened that we had one that was... So, but I think, these properly working are standalone units, even though they work together. They're not necessarily connected to the cloud at all, which I think is quite positive in a way, and in terms of, I mean, you're talking about all millions of people making, a few hundred things, sort of thing. If one was able to get the Internet of Things really usable by other people, this is the sort of thing they might create, and games and playful things, but just very local. Well, and there's a bit of positiveness about this as well. I think
it's hopeful. But I think the thing that's obviously missing is the electronics. So it's not so hard to imagine, especially you're just across the water from Dundee University. We're turning out graduates. 50, 60 graduates a year who have the knowledge and experience of probably doing the IoT of
Yeah,
this.
yeah, yeah.
You'd only need one of them to settle in Tayport and to be making bespoke IoT with you as a potter.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't be the grand Silicon Valley career, but not everyone wants that. You know, could there be a sustainable lifestyle and sustainable lifestyle in making bespoke internet connected objects and then collaborating with the potter or the wood carver or the blacksmith to really make locally relevant things.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's that hard a vision, really. I don't think it would take that much because we've already got the training in place, and it's about establishing the market. I guess if it was driven from a market.
Aye, the market is so important.
Which I suppose is a craft.
Which
That is
you
a
have
craft
here.
argument.
Yeah, and this is here. I mean, I see this. You know, unique gifts handmade from St Andrew's clay, butterwined pottery. You know, and things have prices on £18 for this particular goblet or cup. You know that. So how is that working? Is it the business model for you? Is that working or is it just the act of putting a price on it is actually really nice?
No, I do sell stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
But not enough to make a living from.
But you're teaching and
But
doing
yeah,
this.
because I'm full time at the university. Apart from when I'm doing this,
Yeah.
which.
But
Yeah.
maybe that's the future of the village IoT electronics person. They're doing a portfolio career.
Exactly. I think craftspeople often have portfolio careers. I think they have to sustain themselves in different ways.
Yeah.
It's not just.
The makerspace was the aspiration of the localised production thing, the new village blacksmith that was, you know, basically doing pre-digital. Okay, you need that fixed, I can do it, or you need a bespoke thing for your particular vehicle because they weren't mass produced, they were whatever. That was the job then, and it obviously made sense as a model. I guess it's, are we imagining these are, you know, these are definitely not prototypes. We never commission people to make prototypes, but you could run a project in parallel where you're going, okay, as we have discussed, what does a locally connected lobster pot look like? What does a locally connected other kind of functional, locally produced product look like when you connect it to things, and what's the value of that? So I think there's discussions around not necessarily these objects, but the bigger picture on localism, and I think that was one of the things we're interested in your practice, that it had that localism in a kind of relatively traditional potters. You know, here's my clay, here's the studio, probably here's my customer base, and it's all relatively defined. And I think we were speculating about what would that be like for connected things, because it moves away from this global model that you can parallel between, you know, global cloud services and the way in which, you know, the digital is going along with the way in which globalized industrial production is. You know, they run very nicely in parallel.
A thing I liked about these is the notion that initially, I think both of you actually thought that it might actually work. That was quite interesting. So what was I going to have motors in there or something to actually,
Tip it,
you know, to get it to work, and to, and it's interesting to me that the solution to it is an analog solution, and so there's sometimes I'm a bit skeptical about, you know, what the digital can actually offer that isn't already there or can be done in simpler ways. I'm not quite sure where that thought is, but you know, you could make that really really complicated, but actually it works just as well. in a simplified form, you know, as the analog form. But you could have little motors in there and valves and whatnot.
Yeah. Again, I think one of those things of what's it called, feature creep in technology is a real kind of thing. Craft seems less feature creep orientated. It's more about making one thing do it well. Both in terms of the practicalities of producing something relatively straightforward, but also the kind of that's the trajectory of aspiration rather than to kind of keep throwing extra novelty at it.
That's right. And how? I mean, one of the interesting questions is how to get the digital into something that gradually evolves. You know, how does it actually slide in there and become part of the process, rather than just blam, that's it, that stuff's finished. You know, can it be part? You know, I mean, I think choosing this form interested me because it's, what was it, 17th century, 16th, 17th century was when these sort of things emerged. So that's kind of interesting that we're taking it into the digital world, but you know how to.
Craft by its nature it's easier to make it local because you've got St Andrews clay. Well, I don't know, is that because that's easier to get St Andrews clay, or is that harder in some ways to get St Andrews clay?
Oh, it's way harder.
Yeah, because you have to go and dig it yourself.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist in the marketplace. No. And maybe that's a very important lesson though. So local is not easy anymore, and that's bizarre. It should be easy.
That's right. Absolutely, yeah.
And the same with the local digital.
Yeah.
You know.
I showed Justin that I'd put an air tag on my tea mug for work because I keep losing my tea mug, and my plan was to find, you know, when I'd lost it, photograph it in its lost locations. Yeah. But I've never lost it since, and Justin posited that it's because the AirTag cost me too much. And I've never lost it.
I'd say it's about the same price as one of your mugs, actually.
Exactly.
20 quid.
I suppose value is in the eye of the beholder, isn't it? You know, it's only valuable because there's this movement towards localism, maybe. I don't know if that's right.
Well, I don't know if that. I think you see some very real things, like, you know, right up today as we're making a film, the pound has probably even dropped even lower, and suddenly there is a national conversation around, oh, these cheap imports not looking so cheap anymore, and actually that's because of the lend of economics. The cost to the planet remains exactly the same, and actually I think the planet is probably breathing, certainly the Scottish bit of the planet is probably going, phew, yeah, they're going to have to buy things locally now. It's not, that's not so cheap.
Well, funnily enough,
so it's probably a good thing.
Hopefully later on you'll be eating some of my bread, which is made from Scotland. The bread.
Yeah,
Scotland
from Andrew Whitley.
Flour.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like a cake. I mean, it's you know, it's quite difficult to use.
But he says it's. But also when you talk to Andrew, yeah, but he says it only works if.
You know, one of the attractions of being a craftsperson is that I get to spend lots of time by myself, thinking through things. And I'm sure a lot of craftspeople think that way. You know, it's about a personal journey as much as a product journey. And I see everything I make as a prototype. Actually, it's the next one's going to be better every time. You know, and it's not so much about the thing itself; it's about me. You know, and that to me is what it means to be a craftsperson. I think it's a personal thing.